Before we talk about the problems that the current Japanese economy faces, we have to talk about the history of Japan. Japan started as an isolated island ruled by a feudal system with the samurai. Eventually, the island became rapidly industrialized, with corporations like Mitsubishi. Japan's economy was wrecked by World War II. Afterwards, it became a market economy like the United States, but the asset bubble crash led to the lost decades of the 1990s and 2000s.
Recessions in Japan are growing in both frequency and magnitude. Why is this happening? We look at the three major curves of macroeconomics: the productivity curve, the long-run business cycle, and the short-run business cycle. We believe that Japan is at a point somewhere around here, currently in a short-run recession and a long-run recession.
So why is Japan in this long-run recession? We believe the answer may lie in population demographics. So if we look at a histogram of the population, where a histogram is a graph showing frequencies of groups of individuals, in this case the frequency would be age. So we're splitting them into age groups and looking at the frequency of these people in the age group. So in a developing economy, there are more younger people than older people. And the histogram looks something like this, where the younger people can support the older people. In a stable economy, the population has a more uniform distribution. And it will look something like this. However, in Japan's case, their histogram is very top-heavy, meaning that there are many more older people in the economy compared to the younger people. And their histogram will look like this. One reason for the decreased younger population in Japan is because of the opportunity cost for women to leave the workforce and come home and start a family is increasing. Because of this, more women are choosing to stay in the workforce and earn more money and forego the benefit that it might give the economy of having a family.
But why is an aging population bad for a country's economy? The answer lies in the aggregate supply and demand model. On one axis you have the price level, on the other, real GDP. Now, this is Japan's current short-run aggregate supply, aggregate demand, and long-run aggregate supply. Let's assume that the aggregate demand remains the same, even though the population is aging. An aging population means a decreasing workforce. It's going to cause a short-term shift inwards of the short-run aggregate supply, which is going to cause upward pressure on the price level, causing inflation, and leftward pressure on real GDP, causing economic stagnation. This is the worst-case scenario of stagflation. Even more worrying is the fact that these histogram trends do not appear to be stopping anytime soon, which could cause a permanent leftward shift in the long-run aggregate supply, causing the equilibrium point to shift to a higher price level and a lower real GDP. In fact, Morgan Stanley predicts that this is very possible for the Japanese economy. Japan faces other challenges with their aging population. Similar to the United States of America, Japan operates with a social security system, where the government makes welfare payments to older residents after they retire. Now, in a normal economy with a fairly balanced histogram, this works out fine. The young people work, they pay their taxes to the government pays that money in welfare to the old people. And so when the young people get older, it's the young people who pay the taxes, and it all works out well in the end. The problem for Japan is that there aren't that many young people anymore, which means tax revenue is going down. At the same time, there's more and more old people, which means welfare payments have to go up, which means rising debt.
One strategy the Japanese economy implemented, Japanese economy implemented nothing, the government did.
Yeah.
One strategy the Japanese government implemented was to raise taxes to counteract this imbalance of welfare payments and tax revenue. So they raised taxes. However, consumer confidence was too low for the younger population to handle this tax increase. Because of this, these consumers cut back on spending and started to save in excess, which further hurt the Japanese economy.
As the marginal propensity to save of the Japanese citizens increased, the marginal propensity to consume dropped. This caused a drop in the spending multiplier as well. meaning that any action the Japanese government took to stimulate the economy would not have as great an effect.
Overall, we believe the aging population will be a crucial factor in the downturn of the Japanese economy. Further, we believe that the U.S. may be facing problems like this in the future. Currently, the United States has a population histogram that looks something like this, where we almost have a bulge here from the baby boomer generation. So if this is now, in the coming decades, we might see a shift of something to something that looks similar to the Japanese histogram. So if we project the similar population trends here, in the end, in 20 or so years, the U.S. could have a population histogram like something like this. This would mean the U.S. would be facing a similar problem as Japan, where the younger generation is going to need to see an increase in taxes to pay for the older population.
So what could the Japanese government, and in the future the United States government, do to counteract these problems? Well, one solution would be to fundamentally change the histogram. The government could get the histogram away from looking like this and towards looking like this. They could counteract the problems of the aging population. How do they do this? 1, have more babies. 2, increase immigration.
Another solution would be to overhaul the social welfare system as a whole. This would be a more difficult and controversial approach, as it would require raising the retirement age and decreasing the pension payments for retirees.
Finally, Japan could invest in new technologies that would drastically alter and increase the productivity of their nation. It could change the productivity curve to have a steeper slope, which would lessen the impact of both the small and large recession.